Hey, what's up, Military Millionaires? This is another episode co-hosted with Alex Felice, and today we are interviewing Justin Tahilramani, and this is just really cool because he got into real estate and he kind of started buying some properties here and there, and then he bought a huge farm with no land on it, with no buildings on it, other than some chicken coops, and he just slowly built more and more and more. And now he's got Airbnbs and his primary residence and just a lot of cool stuff to unpack in this about creativity and just not putting yourself into a box. So just a really cool episode. As always, show notes will be found at from militarytomillionaire.com/podcast. Now relax and enjoy the show.
You're listening to the Military Millionaire Podcast, a show about real estate investing for the working class. Stay tuned as we explore ways to help you improve your finances, build wealth through real estate, and become a person that is worth knowing.
Hey guys, today's show sponsor is Rentometer. Now, Rentometer, for those of you not familiar, is a phenomenal tool to help you understand what you can get for rent in your market. Now, I've done some pretty extensive articles and YouTube videos on just this company because I love them, and I absolutely love everything their app does because it will break down not only what your property could rent for based on just the zip code, the size, and the address, neighborhood, whatever. It'll give you comps, and it'll even let you, with the pro membership, which you can get some free trials of, it will let you pull up pictures of the actual houses that are competitive to you, so you can look at it and see, okay, well, if theirs rents for $1,000 and I'm looking at theirs and theirs is better, well, then I might have to go $950. But if I'm looking at their property and mine's nicer, maybe I can go $1,050. I'll tell you what, the Rentometer membership will pay for itself within the first month of adjusting a property's rent in most cases because it's not very expensive, and I have seen people be able to charge $50, $100, $200 more in rent just by understanding their market and their property. So definitely look into Rentometer. I will leave a link down in the description if you're interested. It's no cost at all for you to play around with it, and it will save you or make you tons and tons of money. So rentometer.com. Now back to this episode. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Dave and Alex from the Military Millionaire Podcast, and we are here with Justin Tahilramani. Wow, Tahilramani. I messed it up. I even practiced it, and I'm not going to edit that out because I just want people to know I'm not perfect, and I'll let you fix it. But who is a 13-year Army officer veteran, and he is a buy and hold real estate investor. And he actually was recommended to me by Alex Felice, and we were looking for some people to volunteer, really to put up with the two of us co-hosting, and he volunteered at the same time Alex recommended him. So here we are. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
And tell us a little bit about yourself, but also correct how I mispronounced your name since I butchered it and I'm human.
Actually, I mean, I'm obviously used to it, but it's pronounced Tahilramani. So, yeah, my wife and I are both active duty Army officers. We've been investing in real estate for about the last 10 years or so, most of it exclusively in Fayetteville, or the greater Fayetteville, North Carolina area. We've kind of done a little bit of everything. I mean, we've done, obviously single family, long-term rentals, but we've also gotten into purchasing undeveloped land, doing some development, and also short-term rentals. So we have experience in a little bit of everything, which I feel is kind of what makes what we've done a little bit unique as compared to some other more traditional investors.
So what got you into the undeveloped land, I guess would be my first question. It's not like a market, like norm.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we can start there because I think a lot of the other stuff that we've done has been talked about a lot. And so it wouldn't be a whole lot of value added. But yeah, essentially, so my wife and I are both from the West Coast. We're kind of used to living in, subdivisions where the houses are right on top of each other and nobody has any space. And that's just how it is, So when we moved to North Carolina, initially we were in a master plan community. It was kind of similar. We were actually in a townhouse and we had two really big dogs. And so became pretty evident, that it just wasn't going to work. We're going to have to find something else. So we actually found a home on 4 acres, which when you're going from, living in a subdivision to living on 4 acres, I mean, it just seems like, just an enormous amount of land. So that was just a house that we bought because it fit our family and it, fit, our lifestyle. But it really kind of opened up our eyes to, what it's like to have that kind of freedom, not living in an HOA, having space, not being right on top of your neighbor. So in 2013, my wife and I both deployed to Afghanistan. And, during this time we had been doing, traditional real estate investment. And so I was always keeping up on kind of new listings and things that were coming on the market. And I just happened to cross a farm that had been listed by a local bank. What had happened is it was a poultry farm, and the husband passed away, and the wife just couldn't keep up with it. So it fell into disrepair. And those of you that come from farming backgrounds kind of would understand this, but in the poultry business, they require you to continually update your facilities, and it's really capital intensive. And so if you can't do that, you lose contracts with the big producers. And so that's kind of what happened. And she just couldn't keep up with it. And they, like I said, they fell in disrepair. So the entire farm got foreclosed on. And it was 38 acres and 8 parcels. So all 8 parcels were contiguous, and the bank was just selling it all together, along with the dilapidated chicken houses, which were 40 feet wide and 500 feet long, and there were 2 of them. So I happened across it, and I think, we had no experience in developing land or buying land for that matter. So I did as much due diligence as I knew how to do. Luckily, it was in a county that I was really familiar with, so I understood the zoning, I understood what it could be used for. And I did as much due diligence as I could from Afghanistan, and we ended up putting in an offer, negotiating with the bank, closing on it. My wife was actually on a 12-month deployment, and I was on a 9-month deployment. So I came back early and was the first one to see the land. And I mean, if going from living in a subdivision to 4 acres was eye-opening, stepping foot on 38 acres, it was just overwhelming.
So you lived in it? You moved into it?
So there was no house there. It was just a farm at that point. So what we ended up doing was, the farm joins a subdivision. We actually bought a house in that subdivision that backed up to the land. Was what we did first. So that way we were right next to the land. We spent the next 2 years after buying it cleaning it up because it was a mess. I mean, the bank had partially taken down the chicken houses, but as you can imagine, the front 10 acres was like a dump basically. So we had to clean it all up. It took about a year and a half or so. And during that time, we just kind of got to know that, the land, it's got, pluses and minuses as far as, where you can develop it and stuff. So we took that time just to kind of understand the land and figure out, what was the best course of action, where could we develop. And we started out by building our primary house out there first. So that's where we got started. And that was my first experience, and our first experience building from the ground up and doing a development. But what we did that was unique was that we designed it so that on the first floor of the house, it was our primary residence. And on the second floor, it was separated and had a separate entrance. So it could be, rented out, completely separate from the main house. And then we also built it with a 3-car detached garage that had an apartment on top. So essentially we could live in the first floor and have 2 rentals or 2 spaces for family to come visit us. And it wouldn't disrupt our, day-to-day living in the main house.
But isn't it 38 acres? What do you do with the rest? What are property taxes, and how do you maintain all that land?
So that's a good question. Before we bought the land, the bank had an agreement with one of the adjoining property owners that is in hay production. So about 15 of the acres is maintained by him, and the agreement is he gets the hay. He also maintains all the fields, so we don't have to do that.
You build that into the easement of the deed?
No, that's more of a gentleman's agreement, handshake agreement.
That's awesome. My father-in-law is a big-time cattle farmer, and that's what he does for all his neighbors. Is like, hey, if they own cattle, the deal is like, I get 4 bales, you get 1, and I'll do
Mhm.
everything. And if they don't own cattle, then it's like, hey, X dollars or X cents per bale, and I'll take care of your land or whatever.
Exactly. And, it's incredibly expensive to get into farming. I mean, it's something that, I think is a great hobby, but it's not really, it has to be a hobby because you're not going to make money at it. I mean, especially with how, capital intensive it is with buying equipment, buying tractors, buying the implements, your time. It's just one of those things that, generationally, if you're in it and you have access to that kind of stuff, you can make it work. But for us, the agreement that we have with, our adjoining property owner or landowner, works out for us. And so at a future time, if that changes, we'll obviously have to, figure something else out. But for right now, we're not having to physically maintain all 38 acres. We maintain probably 4 to 5 acres. But
property taxes.
So I'm sorry?
Property taxes.
So property taxes in Harnett County are not high. They're much lower than Cumberland County. But even beyond that, we're in what North Carolina has a present use program, which if you're in agriculture or forestry, they give you an additional break on property taxes. So our property taxes are very low.
Nice.
But yeah, getting back to the house, so that initial development, when we built it, we kind of built it the way we did because it was going to cost a lot of money to build a house anyways. We wanted to build it the way we wanted it and to give ourselves some flexibility. So we figured that we'd have the extra places to rent out or keep for family. Well, once the house was finished and we moved in, we quickly realized that, okay, we have this whole place upstairs that we don't really use. We have this whole place above the garage we don't really use. Our family, they come and visit, a few times a year. So we really need to figure out something to do, to utilize that space better. So I decided to put it up on Airbnb, and I'm sure, Alex, you understand. I mean, we're not in a tourist destination. I mean, I think we're probably as far from a tourist destination as you could imagine. So I really wasn't expecting a whole lot. But from the moment that I put that unit up on Airbnb in 2016, I mean, those 2 units have been booked solid.
Let me ask you a question, because I know that Airbnb is in flux, everywhere. So this is a good conversation because I'm sure a lot of people listening are thinking about it or involved. But I also know that, I'm watching to see how the saturation of the market changes, not just profitability, but usability. Meaning when you started in 2016, there was, I think you have the numbers on this actually. There was only X amount of total Airbnb units in the area, whereas now it's like 3 times that. So my question is, do you think that do you notice that at all, or is it an untapped demand and we have a lot of road left to go where you don't think there's any saturation problems?
So I think I'm going to answer that from 2 different avenues. I think the first avenue is to answer your question that you initially asked. Yes, I mean, it has grown exponentially. I think when we started, and I think Carly is really the one that got the numbers, and has been tracking it. But I think when we both started back in 2016, there were maybe like 90 full unit rentals in the greater Fayetteville area. And if you look today, we're probably approaching 400. So yeah, that's significant growth in just a short amount of time. But I mean, obviously there's the popularity factor. I think people look at it as, a get rich quick, kind of scheme, or a way to, generate more income than they would, alternatively through long-term rentals. But, realistically, I think to really be successful in Airbnb long-term, you can't just rely on Airbnb. Because just like anything else, if you rely on one system, if something happens with that system, then, what is your alternative? So people that are buying, properties and, with the sole purpose of putting it up on Airbnb, or they're qualifying their property by the income that they think they're going to get from Airbnb, those are the ones that I feel like are going to suffer the most if things change. Now, to get on to, do I feel like it's going to be oversaturated? I mean, possibly, but I think, the way I look at it is that when we built our house, the extra 2, like say Airbnb goes away and you can no longer do short-term rentals. We're just saying like worst case scenario. I always, we're always going to need a primary residence, right? So if those other 2 units go underutilized, it's not, it's not a complete loss to me, But the other part of it is that, I think agritourism is a big, potential. There's a lot of potential for agritourism, and in North Carolina, agritourism has special exemptions that where you have protection from the state as far as what you can and can't do on your farm. So, that's not something that we've had to explore because Airbnb in our area hasn't been regulated yet. But if it were to be regulated, I think that that's an avenue that we can look into as far as utilizing exemptions that North Carolina has for agritourism to continue doing short-term rentals.
Yeah, I think you made a good point about short-term rentals. And actually, I just wrote an article for Bigger Pockets talking about Airbnbs are so overrated right now. And some of my point was, and you everybody, I think, well, if you haven't heard my rants about this, it'll come out of this article, come out. But I think what you said is important, that Airbnb is great when you have an asset that works to make a higher profit margin using Airbnb. What I think is the risk is when you buy an asset expecting a higher profit margin from Airbnb, exactly like you said. And because there's so much hype in it right now, and because, it's new and we have a really weird situation, it's like the Uber problem, right? Like the taxis just had no idea how much decentralization was going to impact their business. And so I think Airbnb has a similar, situation, maybe not as prevalent, but it's like there might be more demand than we thought with Airbnb. So I say 400 units versus 90. Oh, that's so much. But it might be like, well, what's the real number? We don't know. It could be 1,600, right? It could be, you could quadruple it again and not feel a dent. So I just don't know how much demand is really there. And then Airbnb also in some ways can create demand, especially as competition increases and the margins come down and it becomes cheaper, which is what's going to happen.
And I think the other thing, I'm sorry, were you going to say something, David?
Oh, I was just going to say that the user base for Airbnb has exploded too. So, I know Alex likes to talk smack about it, but I'm another prime example right now. I'm in a 4-bed house and I've got a downstairs guest right now that's booked for 2.5 weeks. And I've got an upstairs guest that's booked until tomorrow, with one coming in on Wednesday, because I was able to I didn't buy this thinking I was going to make a killing off Airbnb, but it's working out for me, and it's working out for me pretty well.
I don't talk smack about Airbnb in general. What I do, I think what you guys are doing is the intended way to use Airbnb. And I think that's perfect. If you have a place, I have a spare room, I have a spare, lot, I have a spare detached garage, I have a spare loft, whatever, go for it. I think it's fantastic. Yeah. Even if you have 1 or 2 rentals and you turn them into Airbnb, it's like, go for it. You might have more work, but you might make more money, especially in the short run. My complaint with Airbnb is simply the people who take it too far, right? It's like creative financing gone awry kind of thing, where you're like, oh, I just try to make things so complicated to squeeze out an extra return. And it's like, I just don't think it's over the long run. I think for people who are using Airbnb as an investment medium, specifically Airbnb as an investment medium, I think your best days are right now, and they're going to decline from here.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is kind of understanding how to capitalize on Airbnb and short-term rentals and furnished rentals. Once we had our 2 units that we had rented, I knew that there was demand, and so subsequently we built a duplex on the front part of our property, kind of designed for more for short-term rentals. They're it's one bedroom, 1 bathroom units, one on each side. Those also continued to stay booked. I think we opened it to bookings in 2017, and they've continued to stay booked. Part of the draw is the farm, though. Part of the draw is people want to be away from the subdivision. They want to meet up with their husband, their wife, their boyfriend, their girlfriend that's stationed at Fort Bragg, and they're geographically separated, and they don't want to be in a hotel room. They want to come out to our farm and spend some time just being away from the hustle of being in town. So I think that's part of it. But to kind of get back to your point is, so I kind of knew that at least for the short term, there's a need for it. But once we got past the development of the duplex, it was getting pretty capital intensive at that point. It is expensive to build from the ground up, new construction. So initially I was like, hey, how am I going to, just like you said, Alex, what are you doing the rest of your land? I wanted to find a way to utilize, the land that wasn't being used. So I tried to I tried to open up an RV park on the front 10 acres of our land, which is, it's not a permitted use where we're at, but you can get a special use permit. So I applied for the special use permit, had all the plans together, went before the county, you know, pleaded my case, but turns out that the neighborhood, you know, neighborhood didn't want an RV park. So
basically,
they came out.
Got an HOA to shut you down, basically.
Well, so I mean, you know, special use permits, you know, the whole purpose behind them is to make sure that, you know, what you're doing, it may work from a need standpoint, but the county wants to know, does it work from a community standpoint? And I agree with that. I mean, I think that that's important. You know, most of the people in our area have been there for a long time. And so we are the newest landowners, you know, in that area. So you don't want to come in and, you know, kind of rock the boat. I mean, run an
Hi,
Airbnb.
welcome to the neighborhood. Do you like my trailer park?
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, so I was kind of still licking my wounds from that. I mean, I thought that was going to be a really good use for that front of the property. And I came home. It was probably within a week of you know, that getting shut down. And I was online. One of my other side hobbies is buying and selling government surplus stuff. I don't know if you guys, you know, you guys are both in the military, and I'm sure you know about it. But there's websites where the government auctions off, you know, excess property, and you know, I used to buy it and sell it on the side as a hobby. Well, I logged in one day, and we'd had some pretty significant storms over the last couple of years, like 4 or 5 years in North Carolina, and so FEMA had bought a whole bunch of mobile homes to house people that were displaced during the storms, and it just turned out that they were selling like 15 or 20 of them about an hour from my house. And I knew from experience that mobile homes were permitted use, and I could have up to 2 of them on the front of my property. So I started thinking, like, okay, I can buy these mobile homes. They're only a year old, put them on the property, and maybe I can turn those into short-term rentals too. And, you know, from a capital standpoint, you know, I could do it, you know, really affordably. So I did that. I bought two manufactured homes from the government, put them on the front of our property, and like I said, they're only a year old. So I mean, I think one of them I changed out the carpet and stuff.
What'd you pay for?
Furnished. So one of them was about, I think one of them was about $18,000. That was a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom. The other one was about $15,000. That was a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. But that sounds cheap, but you kind of got to double that price, because once you think, you know, you got to get them transported, you got to get permits, you got to get it set up, you got to install septic systems, you got to install water taps, you got to install water lines, you got to get them anchored, you got to get them inspected. So by the time all that's said and done, I mean, you're probably into them for about $25,000 to $28,000 each.
Gee, that's so much.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot more. It's a lot more than 15,000, but so then I furnished those, turned those into short-term rentals, and that kind of filled a niche for us, because all of our other short-term rentals were 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom, which really worked for traveling nurses, people, you know, that were on TUI, contractors, but it didn't really work for the family, you know, PCSing, or the family that is moving in and hasn't found a place to rent yet. So it filled a gap for us by being able to offer 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom short-term rentals. And I was a little bit nervous at first, because I was like, are people going to be turned off by the fact that it's a mobile home? And really they're not. I mean, I think more people they're just happy that it's in the location that it's in, you know? So I think location is really important. But okay, so Alex, we're all into those to say $30,000 each, and we rent them for about $1,250 a month, you know? So, I mean, that's a pretty good return when you consider, you know, the alternative of renting it long-term.
Yeah, for sure. I like that idea. And again, you know, kind of, that's a blend of, you know, the process that I talked negatively about earlier about buying specifically for Airbnb, but at the same time, well, look, when you're spending 30 grand, geez, you can afford to, not to say 30 grand isn't no money, but it's enough that you can, well, look, if Airbnb went away tomorrow and you rented it out for $800 a month, you'd still be really, really good shape if you did a long-term rental. So, I mean, it's hard to lose.
I like that you took 30 plus acres and went from 30 plus acres with chicken farm to 7 units.
Yeah, and it's been a process. It's been a lot of work. I mean, I'm not gonna downplay it. It's taken a lot of hours of, I mean, just from a research standpoint, like what can the land be used for? What, you know, understanding the soils, you know, understanding what the county's going to allow you to do, what they're not going to allow you to do. I mean, luckily Harnett County is a little bit easier to work with. You start getting to Fayetteville and Cumberland County, and they're just the next county over, but it's substantially more difficult to do things. But I think a lot of what I've done is just paid for an education. I mean, I had never bought land before. I had never built a house before. I'd never done a design build. I had never done short-term rentals, and everything that I've done, I think had it failed, I still would have learned, so much more than I could have ever learned from reading in a book or, listening to somebody else who's done it.
So let me ask you a question, because we didn't really talk about why you got into real estate in the first place. And so everybody gets into real estate for some reason, obviously. But I'm curious how this differs from what your intended plan was, because it doesn't sound like this was an intended plan at all. So I'm curious, how does it go from, maybe it was loosely part of your plan, but tell me about that change, that experience going from here's why I wanted to get into real estate versus here's where I'm at now, and how they kind of differ.
So I think what's different about my story is that real estate has always been kind of a part of my life. I mean, because when I was growing up, my parents owned real estate. My dad would take me to his rental properties, and I mean, at the time, it felt like he was, forcing me to, I don't know, work for free, child labor. I'd be painting houses, I'd be helping him with plumbing, repairs, landscaping, fence repair, you name it, we did it. I mean, he did everything himself. But that's what I understand. I mean, real estate is what I saw my parents use to, reach financial freedom. And so I didn't understand the stock market. I didn't understand, mutual funds. I didn't understand the TSP when I first came in the military. The one thing that I understood was real estate. I knew that, and I knew enough about it to realize that as long as you're buying it right and you're willing to hold on to it and weather the storms, I mean, you're gonna be all right. So I wouldn't say that I went into my real estate investing career with a specific plan. I've just kind of developed and grown as I've gone, and tried to make the best decisions that I can. But yeah, like you said, we got a little bit off track with buying the farm and doing these other things. But it was an opportunity at that time that opportunity was present. We had, I felt like we had to take it because, you look at all the things that people are really going after now. What's the hottest thing is mobile home parks. Well, guess what? You can't build a mobile home park today. And if you can, it's so expensive that it just doesn't make sense, right? So back in the 60s and 70s, when, people were investing in real estate and mobile home parks were something that were the norm and you could do, the people that did it when they could do it are the ones that are benefiting today because you can't do it anymore. I wanted to buy that land and develop it as quickly as I could because at that time I can do it. 20 years from now, Harnett County may be more difficult than Cumberland County. You don't know what you won't be able to do in the future. So that's why I wanted to do it now.
Yeah, I like that. I've been hot on this for the last few weeks, actually, about pivoting, especially in real estate. For listeners who are maybe new or just trying to ramp up or having just maybe gotten started, you probably start to realize real estate is in peak mania right now, especially since 2017. And this isn't to say that. This isn't about a prediction of the future. It's just like, look, it's popular and that prices are up, and it's been that's been exacerbated by low interest rates. And so I say all that to say, you saw an opportunity and you're like, look, this isn't part of the plan, but it's an opportunity that I have that nobody else. I mean, that specific opportunity, nobody else had the chance to get it. You had the chance to get it. Nobody else is running after it, right? What's everybody running after in Fayetteville? 3-2s that do burr. That's basically it. And so it's like, look, you can compete against everybody else, or like you said, mobile homes are really popular right now. Well, you can compete against everybody else, or you can go off. It's like the low hanging fruit. The low hanging fruit has no juice. The fruit that everybody's competing for has no juice. If you're sitting there trying to pick apples, it's like the giraffe comes along and gets that one way up there that nobody else, is fighting over. And so I love that you were able to say, I want to get into real estate and I'm flexible about the capacity in which I do that. And so you're like, look, I can make this. I found this great opportunity and I could run with it.
And having the land, obviously in 2016, I had no idea that in 2017, we bought the land in 2013. So in 2013, I had no idea that in 2017, this opportunity to buy mobile homes was going to be there, right? But had that opportunity come and those mobile homes were there, but I had nowhere to put them, I mean, that was an advantage that I had, is that, the opportunity presented itself, and I had already, positioned myself, if you will, to have the place to put those, even though I didn't know at the time that was going to happen.
Yeah, it's well, David's still here, right? David here?
I've been trying to talk, but there's this Alex guy on here. I'm gonna have to build a code where I think I can mute you. Oh man, I can mute you. Oh, that's great. It's gonna be awesome.
Woo! We'll be back with the show in just a minute, but I wanted to take a brief second and say that, look, you are already obviously investing in yourself by listening to this podcast. But if you can't figure out how to get past all that daunting crap that you just don't know how to sort through, and you're trying to get started in real estate investing and you're just stuck, I mean, it happens to all of us. It's daunting. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know everything there is to know, and you don't know really where to find all the information. So that is why I created the Real Estate Investing for Beginners 0 to 1 course, which is solely designed to get you from I want to invest in real estate to holy crap, I have a rental and it's cash flowing. And this course is not going to be anything super complicated that you won't be able to understand. It is just designed to teach you how to build a team, find investments, finance investments, conduct due diligence, close on the investment, and then operate it so that you can enter the real estate investing world smoothly. So if that sounds like something that interests you, definitely check out the link below, and it's cheap as hell right now.
So I was just going to say, people talk about focus all the time, right? Like you hear people all the time talking about you have to be you need to buy 3-2 single family, this, like focus as like the end all be all, and people who don't focus fail. And I understand where they're coming from, but it doesn't sound like you did that. And I'm kind of the same way. Like I've dipped my feet in a lot of different pools. Sometimes like the Airbnb, it was just like, well, this makes sense. So let's learn something new. But I'm just curious, since you clearly have kind of been open-minded and not so much focused on a single style of investing, what your thoughts are on the idea that you have to be focused into one niche, or do you think it's helped you to be more creative, open-minded? And
I mean, I feel like it's been really helpful to be agile, I guess, if you will, for lack of a better word. Just because, look, 3-2 single family homes are always going to be there. I mean, that they're not going anywhere. I think if you can capitalize on the things that may not be here forever, that's where you can really get ahead. Because, and the other thing is, I mean, I think what we haven't talked about is during this entire time, I mean, the bigger pockets phenomena was occurring. There used to be a time in Fayetteville where you could scoop up a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom without any competition under list price. And it was just an everyday thing, and that's not how it is today. Today, I don't even look at VA foreclosures or HUD homes anymore. It's just not worth my time, because a million eyeballs are on those same listings, and I'm not willing to pay what they're asking for them. So,
well, to add to that, because it's not just popularity, right? It's also, and this is what I feel so bad for about new real estate investors. In 2012, the banks started unloading just massive volumes of foreclosures off their books, right? And it took them 5 years to get them all off the books from the 2008 collapse. So 2017 is when they finally started drying up. And so combine popularity with lack of inventory is what really, and so I'm with you what you're saying. It's like people are driving prices up. It's like, yeah, and they found out that it was popular from the high volume of foreclosures that are available, but by the time they got in the market, the foreclosures are all gone. So now people are fighting over regular prices. It's a very interesting situation. But sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. So all that just to say that I think, the plain Jane, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, single family, investing is always going to be there. We continue to do that even through, some of our short-term rental and, other real estate endeavors, but to me, I can spend 20 minutes a day or 15 minutes a day on Zillow and on, Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace and Realtor.com. And I can see if there's a property that has a glimmer of hope, pretty quickly. It just doesn't take that long to do that. So, that's just kind of an everyday thing for me that I just check out, what's new on the market and what might have, some potential. And really lately, the only thing I've been having any luck with are, for sale by owner or, really that's it. For sale by owner.
Well, and I think, I'm just to clarify for people listening to this, I am not recommending that you go and buy your first buy and hold rental, then buy a flip, then start wholesaling. What I'm recommending is that in the buy and hold class or in the flip class, you don't necessarily need to drive down into a specific bedroom or size, or if you're focused on buy and hold and you understand the numbers very clearly, you can make a farm work with a triplex or build a duplex or buy mobile homes. And they're all similar asset classes, but there's a lot of people who would say, oh, I don't touch mobile homes. So, I just do the triplex, and they're so focused that they miss out on opportunities. So what's the phrase? Don't miss the forest for the trees, I think.
I love
So I think the pivot is a good point. If you're staying within the general concept, I mean, you can be an expert in understanding buy and hold numbers and buy and hold all kinds of things.
Exactly. And we went about it. It sounds like we went about it quickly, but we went about it slowly. We did one project at a time, and,
You own other properties too. We've been focused on this farm.
yeah.
What else have you done?
Yeah, we own other single family rental properties in both Cumberland County and Harnett County. We own a few multifamily properties. I would love to get into more multifamily, but it's just difficult where we're at. There's not that many of them, and the ones that are available, they're even there's even more competition than there are for foreclosures. It just seems like you really have to force the numbers to work on some of the multifamily properties. So, but yeah, currently we're working on a buy and hold rehab that we're almost completed with, so it should hit the market here pretty soon for rent. But yeah, we're just kind of always trying to grow and, trying to have some project to work on. Cause I think, I'd rather take as a long-term buy and hold investor. I know a lot of people, talk about, only wanting to do, home run deals, which, that I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but if I'm going to buy a property and keep it for 20 or 30 years as a rental, do I really care if I buy it at 65,000 or at 60,000 or at 58,000? It's just, I think people get wrapped up in trying to, be impressed by the deal that they get, that they miss out. There's nothing wrong with a base hit, or a double. You don't have to, you don't have to wait a year to get a home run and only do, one deal a year. Because when you're looking at it, you're in it for the long term. Unless you're looking to flip it or do something like that or wholesale. That's not what I do though. So.
I just love your whole persona, that you just don't seem that, there's just not that much ego driving you. It doesn't seem, which, is a very unique phenomenon from my perspective, because I'm only driven by ego. But no, it's really important, right? Because what happens is people get into real estate and they get excited, and it's a very, how do I say it? It's like a really addictive type genre. And so people get in, they're like, man, I'm gonna go all in on real estate, learn. I want to buy. I'm gonna buy 40 units in 2020 and all this stuff. And it's like, man, it's so easy to get wrapped up. And the problem with real estate is it's easily lendable by debt. And so you become easily obliged. You can easily oblige yourself to debt, and you get wrapped up in these numbers and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, man, if you could really, like, we didn't really talk about it, but Justin, it just seems like, you got your family, you got work, and then third down here, you have real estate, and you keep busy and you do a lot of it. And I'm not trying to dismiss that at all. It's just, it's not the driving force of your ego. And it comes through when you talk and you're like, look, I want to keep myself busy. I want to do this, but I'm not trying to compete with anybody, but I'm just trying to make a retirement for myself. And I love that approach.
And I would say that a few of the investors I know with similar mindset seem to be the more successful of the group.
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say that, I think it's really important. I'm married, and I think it's really important that if you're going to do this and you're going to, try to scale and do it long-term and, like you said, pivot to things that maybe you didn't think you were going to do originally. It's really important to have a supportive spouse. I think if you don't have, if your other half isn't on board, it's going to be an uphill battle. At that point, it becomes, what's more important, what you want to do from a real estate perspective or your family, and I think, if my wife hadn't been so, what am I trying to say? If she hadn't have been so supportive, from the time that, we started investing in real estate, there's no way that we would be where we are today, because we would have put so many roadblocks that we wouldn't have been able to overcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you box yourself into either needing to be a perfect deal or having to ask permission and just it. Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, I joke all the time. My wife is extremely supportive. However, she is not, I don't want to say she's not involved, but like, she's not like, I give her a hard time because I bought her Rich Dad Poor Dad like 4 years ago, and it's been read by like 7 other people and she hasn't finished it yet. But she's very supportive and she's very all about helping out with stuff. And I see all the time, I mean, investors who either spouse is not on board or spouse wants to wait or spouse's risk tolerance is different. And it just, yeah, it's not easy.
Like I'll put it to you this way. If I had gone to almost anybody else and said, I want to build our dream house, but I want our dream house to have an apartment on the second floor and a detached garage with an apartment next door, I can guarantee you that 90% of spouses out there would say, no way, no how, that's just not going to happen. But if we hadn't,
dream house.
Yeah, that's not a dream house. To me, that's a dream house. It's free. It pays for itself. I don't think I've ever paid a penny for the house that we live in North Carolina. But, had we not done that, I never would have, realized the potential that was untapped for the whole short-term rental, piece of this. We wouldn't have built a duplex. We wouldn't have bought, the mobile homes. We wouldn't be where we are today. So, I do see on the forums a lot of people starting out with, hey, I want a house hack, but my spouse is not on board. I think that's challenging, because I think that not having a spouse that's on board can really be a limiting factor in success.
Grant Cardone wrote the book Sell or Be Sold. I know it's not his most popular book, but the message in that book is incredible. And it's like, look, if you can't sell everything is a sales job, right? If you can't convince the number one person in your life that this is a good idea, how can you possibly convince the rest of the world? How can you convince a stranger to get on board with your idea if you can't convince the person that's supposed to be, your number one? And I know that, hearing that stuff, there's a lot of people out there that are listening that are gonna be like, I can't convince my wife, so I'm stuck. And it's like, yeah, you are stuck. But no, that is the really important. I say that to say, it's a really important responsibility that you have to be able to sell the people in your immediate circle before you can really sell the outside people. And it doesn't matter maybe for 1 or 2 deals, but man, if you want to grow into something big, it's like you can't do it against the current, like you said.
Yeah, you also have to have stable income and good credit. I mean, the people who say you can do something out of nothing, I mean, that's just not my experience. My experience is that if you want to have access to funds, if you want to be able to get a loan for a property tomorrow that you found today, and not have to rely on hard money and all these other things that people talk about, I mean, you need to establish yourself financially. I mean, you need to have a good income or good savings. You need to maintain your credit. Those things are important. I think the people that say that, hey, you can do it with nothing, or you can do it with a horrible credit score, or, I'm not going to say it's impossible, because I haven't personally, been there or done that. But I think you open yourself up to a whole lot more risk when you're forced to operate, in that way.
Yeah, well, it's kind of you're patching the wrong problem. You're patching instead of fixing. So like, if you got bad credit, I used to have bad credit. I'm not, it's not something that happens to people by accident, right? It's our own personal irresponsibility. And so sometimes that can be from outside sources for sure. But yeah, I look at it like this. If you're going to go run a business, right, it has an asset, it has a balance sheet and an income statement. Every business does, right? Does it make money, and is it, overwatering its assets? So, okay, you can't run that asset sheet positively unless you can run your own. And every individual has their own income statement and a balance sheet, just because a lot of people don't know it or look at it or know how to put it together. But if that thing runs red, right? If you can't run your own personal finances and your own personal credit, if you can't run it good, you're not going to run the business, because you're not going to run the business good. It's like the old saying, how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so I'm with you 100% on that. I agree with that completely. If you don't have the money, you don't have the credit, like now's the time to wait and practice because you're not ready for the big leagues yet. Not really. Sure, people can do it. I know that somebody's going to send me an extenuating circumstance. But like you said, for the most part, it's like, dude, set yourself up for success. Get your systems in place. Get your credit up. Get your money right. Get your wife on board. And then you have a real estate is very forgiving. You have a lot of reasons to be successful. But if you go against the grain in all these areas, man, it makes it so much more hard.
And I like to think in terms of worst case scenario. So as Alex knows, and those who listen to this, I've had some hits, taken a few hits this last year, but in all of those, I always ask, like, what's the worst case scenario before I get into this? And the worst case scenario is I take a hit, I lose some money, and I'm still fine. The people who start off with no credit, no savings, no whatever, if they took the same hit that I just took, I mean, that might be it. Like that's just, so I think that's the difference. It's not that it can't be done. It's that what if, right? And what ifs happen. So what if, and then can you survive it? Right. And that's the part that scares me. All right. So with that in mind, got a fean questions I always ask. First one being, if an E1, E2 was to walk up to you asking you for advice, what would you tell them?
I mean, as far as real estate goes?
Sure. I mean, if you got some other wise words, we'll hear them.
I mean, I would say that, somebody that junior in their career, I mean, first of all, they probably need to spend some time establishing, whether or not, they like the military and they think it's going to be, a long-term career for them. And if so, I don't think there's any problem, getting involved in real estate, but they need to understand that, they're going to move and, PCSing from one location to another and having real estate, you can absolutely do it. But for somebody who's not experienced in real estate, is that something that they really want to get involved with? Because it's hard enough learning, the ropes, but it's even harder when, you're still relatively, young in your career and financially, you may not be as stable as you want to be. And now you're, in a different location and you're buying another house and then you get PCS again. And now you got a third house and you got 3 houses in 3 different states, which I know is what a lot of people in the military community say is, hey, buy a house everywhere you go and, do your 20 years or your 30 years and get out and you'll be set. And I mean, I'm sure that does work, but you got to think about the other implications of that is there's no economies of scale there. Now you have 3 different property managers using, you may have to file 3 different tax returns. You don't have the scale in any one area to really develop a team or a base that can be there for you. So that's what I would tell them. I would tell them, absolutely look at real estate as an avenue, but just know that, simply buying real estate everywhere you go may not be the best option.
Yeah. You buy a 30-year mortgage at 20, you're in the military, you're an E, nothing. You buy a 30-year mortgage and I'm like, dude, you just committed to a program that lasts longer than your career is going to last, and you're only in the first or second year. So I like that a little more conservative approach. I like that you said that.
Yeah, in the VA, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're the guest.
I think the VA loan is a really good, it's a really good benefit for people in the military. And if you use it too early, you may be shortchanging yourself. I mean, you may be in a low cost of living area now, and maybe you get PCS to California and the market's low, and you have this amazing opportunity to potentially buy a higher priced house, in a growing economy. You may have shortchanged yourself by using that VA loan and a $60,000 house.
I wrote an article on BP, another testy article, a VA loan is a trap for new investors. And it goes through some of the pitfalls. Like you said, it's like, just because you have that 0% loan, a 0 down loan doesn't mean you should run off and just do it because, you see that one piece of it, no money down, but there are hinges, obstacles. And I've never heard the one you said, and I just love it. It's like you go, well, but I have to ask them, can't you get 2 VA loans?
You can, but let's talk about that. Yes, you can, but the funding fee goes up, substantially. And I just don't think it's a long-term solution. I mean, so somebody that is local to Fayetteville reached out to me and they said, hey, I've just got my first property. Yeah, I used my VA loan. what do I do now? And my answer is you save 20%. I mean, that's the long-term, that's how you grow, is you don't rely on all these niche programs that you can get in on. The long-term solution is you save 20%, you put 20% down and you buy an investment property. And that, to me, that's the way it works. I mean, I'm sure that, you can, move every 2 years, and there's all these other approaches that you can do to get, more preferential terms on loans. But if you have a family, if you're not going to, most people don't want to move every 2 years, if they don't have to. So, and that's not really a sustainable approach, over 30 years. I don't think. You don't want to move 15 times, do you? So I think you go into it, utilize, the benefits that you can if you're doing an owner occupant, and that works. But if you're looking to, buy 3 or 4 or more properties per year, you have to get used to, hey, I'm going to have some money. I'm going to have to save. I bought more houses last year than I bought shoes or pants. It's like you have to downsize other parts of your life if you want to have the ability to, grow. There's no easy button.
I like that. Yeah, I'm going to have to try to steal that quote and turn it into a quote image or whatever they call those things.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times people have noticed that I've got a $150 cell phone from Amazon, or, like, I have
peasants on here. Okay. You got to step up, Justin.
I know I have Cricket Wireless for cell phone service. I mean, but this just, it works for me. And, why spend $500 on an iPhone when I can spend $150 on a phone that works just as good for me?
Hey, weren't you busting my chops about wearing the same T-shirt?
That was me.
Yeah.
I don't have an iPhone either because, they suck and they're just for status. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, I don't say that,
I know.
I just say that, like, I don't live a lifestyle that I could afford to live a much better lifestyle than I do. I mean, I drive an old car. I don't have the nicest, newest things. I don't have, a lot of the gadgets that I see people, that can't afford it have. And I think the trade-off is that, well, guess what? I get to save the 20% for the next house that I want to buy. That's the difference,
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So what is one resource, book, course, website, whatever, that you would recommend to anybody looking to get started in real estate investing?
I mean, I have to say you can't discount the amount of knowledge and resources that you can gain from both BiggerPockets and YouTube. I think if you spend some time on BiggerPockets and you spend some time watching YouTube videos, I mean, it's not hard to find the content creators on the real estate side of YouTube that really have some good information, and it's free, I mean, the thing about BiggerPockets now is it's gotten just so huge that, like 4 or 5 years ago when I was, really, following it closely, it was a little bit different than it is today. But still, I mean, you just have to be able to filter out all the noise and get to the real good, information that's available. I'm going to be honest, I'm not big on books. I mean, I don't read a whole lot of books. I do most of my, like I said, I pay for a lot of the experiences that I've learned in real estate just by doing it.
I hate you. Just so you know. That's it. I hate you.
It's funny because I'm glad you said that a second time, because I muted you knowing that you were going to come back with something when he said he hates books.
I hate you. Hey, actually, what's interesting about BiggerPockets, and I meant to tell you this, I meant to message you this. I was going through my BiggerPockets. For some reason, I was trying to pull up an old message from Mindy from like 6 years ago. So I'm going through my old messages on BiggerPockets. And this is, if you've been on BP for a long time, this is a really interesting exercise. I went back, and do you know that you and I talked like 6 years ago? And I had forgotten all about it. We exchanged one short message. It was like, hey, I'm looking in North Carolina. And you're like, yeah, I'm doing something or other. You were not, that was it. It was like, I said something, you said something, that was it. But I think it's interesting, the BP, the community. And like you said, yeah, it's got a little saturated, so it's harder now. Okay. But the people who stuck around that website kind of seem to stick around. So if you get on there, you message people, you'd be surprised how those relationships compound. I mean, that's not why you and I are friends now, but I think it's telling that it's like, yeah, but we could have been if maybe one of us had, kept that communication chain going. So I just thought it was an interesting thing that you say that.
It's also fun to be able to go in and you can see, and I did this to Alex at one point, but you can see the first post people ever made. So you can go in and be like, oh, what was click? But on that note, we need to wrap this up. So where can people get a hold of you, Justin?
I mean, I am on Bigger Pockets. You can find me there. I mean, I'm sure I gave you my email address. I don't know if you post that, on the show notes. Yeah. But that's primarily probably the best way to get a hold of me is just shoot me an email if you have a need to connect.
Sounds good. I will put the email down in the show notes for those of you who are listening. And yeah, Justin, thank you very much. This has been awesome.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm going to come stay in your farm sometime.
Well, the open invitation for either one of you guys.
Woo! All right. You guys have a good one.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you for listening to another episode about my journey from military to millionaire. If you liked it, be sure to visit FromMilitaryToMillionaire.com/podcast to subscribe to future podcasts. While you're there, we'd love for you to rate the show, give us a review on iTunes. Now get out there and take action.